5 more things that you should know as a JavaScript developer. If you haven't seen my first video on 5 things you should know, definitely go check that out because I think there's definitely some helpful tips in there, but we're going to hit on 5 more in this episode here. So the first one we're going to talk about is optional chaining. So here on line 84, I have a object with 2 different functions, say hello and say thank you. And there are the functions that just return hello and thank you. And then here on lines 89 through 91, I'm going to call these functions. Now, what if I try to call a function on this object that doesn't exist? Well, I would get an error. But how could I prevent that error? Well, I could use optional chaining. So the way that I could do this is when I call my function, I can actually add a question mark behind the label of the property, and then I can do a dot, and then I can invoke that function with the parentheses. And this will prevent an error if that property doesn't exist. So as you can see here, I try to call the say goodbye property, but this is actually just going to return undefined instead of throwing an error because I use optional chaining. You're going to see that I get hello, thank you, and undefined. But if I didn't do this optional chaining here on my property that doesn't exist, you'll see that I will get a big old error here. So you can avoid those errors by using optional chaining. And for the second thing you should know, it is how to remove duplicates using a set. So here on line 95, I initialize an array that has duplicates. On line 97, I create a new set and I pass in my array. The set is going to contain unique values. So this is automatically going to get rid of my duplicates when I pass my array into new set. And then all I need to do is recreate an array with my set. So a set is iterable, which means that I can use the spread operator on my set, and this will spread all the values of my set into this new array here using the spread operator. And then if I console log no duplicates, you're going to see that I now have an array without duplicates. For the third tip, it is how to get the sum of an array within JavaScript. Now, JavaScript does have a math function, and you might think that you could just call math.sum, but unfortunately you can't within JavaScript. So what is potentially a better approach here is using the reduce method. So on line 105, you can see that I initialize an array with some different values within it. And then to get the sum of this array, you can call array.reduce and pass in your reducer function. I'm going to take my accumulator parameter as well as my current parameter, which will be the current value of my array. And all I need to do is return adding those values together. And you're going to see that that will give me the sum of my array. For the fourth JavaScript tip that you should know, it is using the double question mark operator to check whether something is null or undefined. So here on line 115, I have a constant called SomeValue and it is undefined. And then I want to create a constant called is null or undefined. So how could I check if this value is null or undefined? Well, I could use SomeValue and then the double question mark operator and then return true. Because if it is null or undefined, it is going to return what is to the right of the double question marks here. So if I run this code right now and I console log is null or undefined, you're going to get true because this is undefined. And then if it's null here, I can check, okay, is it null? Yes, it is. But if I put the value of 0, which is a falsy value here, but I check, is it null or undefined? It actually is just going to return 0. Because this is not null or undefined, so it will not return what's right of the question marks. It just will return the first value because it is not null or undefined. And the fifth and final JavaScript here is an easier way to check if a value is truthy. So sometimes you might use if this value is true and use an if statement to do that, but sometimes there's an easier way to go about doing this. And this is with the double ampersand operator. So here on line 123, I have some value, assigned it to the value of null. And then I tried to create another constant called other value. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to evaluate the sum value. And if this value is truthy, I'm going to return the string truthy. So I'm using my double ampersand operator, which will check if this value is truthy. And if it is, it's going to return this value here. But if it's not, it's just going to return some value here. So if I run this, you're going to see that it returns null because this is not a truthy value. But if I set this to the string null and a string value that is truthy, you can see that I do indeed get truthy.